What's going on, everybody? Welcome to PFF's live NFL preview show for week 9 of the season. So glad that you guys are here hanging out with us. Trevor Sikkema, Sam Monson, Eric Eager here on the desk. Fellas, how we doing this week? Pretty slow week news-wise, right? Probably won't have a ton to talk about here on the show, right?
There was more content created this week that might be created during the 1 o'clock hour today. Don't you think of the NFL, right? Like, a lot of the games are good after, Packers, Chiefs, obviously, Titans, Rams. But, man, this week was something.
People are telling me news that happened on Monday, and I'm like, that was 3 months ago. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It truly felt like one of the longest weeks of the NFL season because of everything that happened.
Yeah, this week was absolute chaos. Like, all kinds of news, most of it not even related to what's going on the field, which made it even more crazy.
Right,
Bizarre.
right. We have so many things to get to. We're going to give you all the best bets for all the games. I promise we're going to get to the game previews as well, but we're going to hit all the major storylines. We're going to give you our thoughts and opinions on how they affect not just this week, but the weeks to come as well. We also, of course, have Kendall Valenzuela here with us. Kendall,
hello.
How are we doing this week?
Hello. Nice to be here. Excited to be in the YouTube chats. Make sure to leave all your comments. It's going to be a good show.
Yes. I'm very excited for the YouTube. God, these are famous last words. I was just going to say I'm very excited for the YouTube chat today because I feel like people are going to want to get in on the show more than they ever have because of the things that we get to talk about. So, but yeah, like I said, those are
famous last words.
Those are absolutely famous last words. Before we get into things, we're here in the beautiful Western and Southern studio. And Western Southern is doing something really cool. They're teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to give you insight that's going to get you ahead on both the fantasy and financial scoreboards. You want to hear about Chris's old playing days? There's some behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football, or maybe just the answers to all the needs to know financial questions that you have. Well, you can ask Western and Southern, and every single question that you ask gets you a chance to win a catered event for the big game at the end of the season. You can ask your questions going over to westernsouthern.com/askchris. That's westernsouthern.com/askchris. And remember, with Western and Southern, you can be rest assured on game day. Guys, let's start with Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay.
The content machine that has been Odell Beckham Jr. really, it seems like, since his rookie season with the Giants. Had a very successful stint with the Giants, and there was kind of this big falling out. He got his money, and then he wanted to go somewhere else, wanted out, ends up going to Cleveland. We think, okay, here we go. Here's a new start. This could be it for offense in Cleveland. They get Baker Mayfield. This is the perfect opportunity. Here we go. Now the marriage is broken. Odell wants out. And though he's not technically released, that's the plan coming tomorrow, that he's going to be released. What do you guys think about this Odell Beckham situation and what his landing spots might be once he does eventually get released?
Well, this feels like, wow, that escalated fast, didn't it?
Yes.
We were, last week, we were all still debating, like, okay, does he even make them worse? Like, what is going on here? What's the dynamic? How much is Odell at blame? How much is Baker Mayfield? All that kind of stuff. And then his dad posts an Instagram story highlighting all the plays where he's wide open and Baker's not hitting him. And all of a sudden it's like, no, this is done. Like, the whole thing is blown up. Odell's packing his bags. He's out of here. Baker's like fielding questions about it, being like, I mean, if we just picked up the phone, maybe we could get back together. Like, the whole thing just spiraled out of control in like 48 hours.
It's as if Odell wasn't enough of like a headline grabber. Yeah. Dad posting clips of you being open. That's got to be an ace bingo square.
Well,
for what
Bomani Jones said something funny. He's like, do you actually think that Odell's dad was like capable of like clipping clips and like recording that and posting it? It's like, obviously, like, this is a team effort on the Beckham Jr. and Senior like sort of group there.
Everybody's got to have an IT guy. Everybody's got to have a graphics guy.
Exactly. And so clearly he wanted out. Clearly, I think the Browns, a lot of questions as to whether they can be a championship caliber team if they are allocating targets to a player who's clearly not being productive with them. It just is weird to us because Odell was so good in New York with a quarterback that was basically
on the way down,
basically at the end, right? And so I think ultimately this is going to be good for Cleveland. It just is really ugly right now.
So what ended up happening was the Browns were able to negotiate Odell Beckham's deal to where he had a couple of years left on his deal. Now they kind of took those away. He's got a $7.5 million cap hit, so when he is waived, if someone picks him off waivers, they take that salary. But if he clears waivers, which is what we expect, then he basically gets to choose where he wants to go. It has been made known that Odell wants to play for a contender. Oh, Cleveland could have been a contender. So what do we think that the ideal landing spots might be for Odell Beckham, both financially and maybe so he doesn't, get pissed that he's not playing for a contender again.
Like a Randy Moss Titans thing, right? Where Jeff Fisher claims him and he's like kind of just around for the rest of the year. Like, that seems like negative EV for
because like
Beckham.
the Jags and the Lions are at the top of the waiver order, and both of those teams could use a wide receiver like Odell Beckham Jr. But I don't think.
Well, that was the whole thing that perplexed me about why they didn't just this is why I think Cleveland's actually, from a humanistic perspective, like doing Beckham a favor, because like there was no reason they had to just like they could have just Keyshawn him the rest of the year and sat him, because where you're at in Cleveland 4-4, there's a bunch of teams near you that could use Beckham. The Steelers could use him possibly.
Right.
The Ravens could use him possibly.
Right.
The Bengals probably not. But then like Kansas City is another team. Now the money might not work with Kansas City, but they're a team that you have the tiebreaker against. Like they have it against you, and you could finish. Like there's going to be a good team in the AFC that doesn't make the playoffs, and if that team gets Beckham, they could leapfrog Cleveland. So. I don't know. It was kind of a weird decision for them to let him go.
But I think that's like it's clear that they believe that Odell Beckham being around but marginalized would not be a good thing for this team. And I think you can sort of see that, John Johnson, like this is the world, right? We're now analyzing who liked the post on Instagram. John Johnson was one of the players of the Browns that liked the post, highlighting all the plays.
It's real journalism.
John Johnson has come out and said that like we are better with Odell Beckham in the team. If you then take Beckham, park him off to the side and say, you're just not going to play, you're going to go through the motions, do your do the contractually obligated stuff, but you're not part of this team.
Yeah.
There's a chunk of players on that roster that would be pretty pissed off at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. John Johnson, a half a year into a new deal too with Cleveland, so that is something where you've had a couple players that have been acquired by Cleveland over the last 2-3 years that have been unhappy with sort of the way Beckham has been treated, I guess.
Really, real quick, do you have like a landing spot that you guys love? I love Baltimore, but then again, that feels really weird that he would leave Cleveland and Cleveland would let him go and he'd be on Baltimore. But I love Baltimore as a landing spot for him.
Yeah, New England's another one where I think Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers and the tight ends have played fine, but
they could use a star.
They could use a star receiver, and Mac Jones has played well enough, and their schedule's not that hard because the AFC East is kind of bad. Other than Buffalo, like they could do some things there.
What do you think, Sam?
I love the Raiders. I mean, obviously the Raiders now have an opening at wide receiver through another piece of news. But Derek Carr is playing at an incredibly high level. They have the need of a receiver, particularly one that can still go deep and take the top off a defense. I think that would be a phenomenal.
Reportedly had met this week with Deshaun Jackson, who kind of fits. It was obviously not as good as Beckham anymore, but like fits the same kind of role as Ruggs. But yeah.
Right. I feel like the Saints would have been an interesting spot if Jameis didn't get hurt. Now I'm not so sure if Beckham would want to go back, even if
the Saints will be running the wishbone by the end of the year.
Another team that could be in the mix that people brought up is the Los Angeles Rams, and one of the players for the Los Angeles Rams has been caping for Odell Beckham Jr. a little bit. Is their new pass rusher? It's Von Miller. Von Miller gets traded to the Rams. Didn't really see that one coming from all of the trade deadline speculation. Here's who could be going where. The Broncos end up getting 2 day 2 selections for Von Miller. What do we think about him going to the Rams and how this all came about?
I'm really intrigued by it. Like, Aaron Donald is the best pass rusher in the NFL, period. Von Miller has been the best edge rusher in the NFL over the course of his career. Now the two of them have the chance to play next to each other. Miller has never had a player like Aaron Donald inside of him. Donald has never had a player as good as Von Miller outside. Like, Von Miller's not the player he once was, but I'm really fascinated, like, can the combination of Miller and Donald actually end up being better than just the two players put together?
Yeah, interestingly, like, Leonard Floyd had no pressures in week 1. And so I think we all kind of like in our minds are like, oh, he's just like he played on an nice and easy deal last year. They gave him the $16 million APY. And you quietly look at him, and he's been involved in 8 sacks this year. He's actually had a better season this year than last year. So you look at that defensive line, you have the Donald, but then you also have the 2 edge guys are both pretty good. I think, honestly, Floyd is probably right now maybe the better player than Miller, and then Miller's a complimentary guy. Like that's kind of scary. And, hopefully he can stay healthy. Reports are he's not going to play today. But, to me, the only thing I worry about with the Rams is your window now 1 year? Because your first draft pick next year is round 5.
Right.
Like, eventually these things are going to pile up.
Sure.
And a 4th round pick on Sony Michel is your backup running back. 2nd and 3rd here. Then obviously what they gave up for Stafford. eventually these things are going to add up.
Well, the Rams are doing what a lot of us kind of ask teams to do, but it's just do that go all in thing. And
I don't think they are. I don't think they are. I think people are misrepresenting what the Rams are doing. This is definitely the most short-sighted move that they've made in terms of like a couple of pretty important and valuable picks for a guy who's potentially only there for like 10 games or whatever it is. But the Rams don't just get rid of all their picks and, the meme that Les Snead's kids bought him with the bug. That's not what they do. They have picked an average of more than 9 times over the last 5 years, right? That's a lot. You only get, in theory, 7 draft picks to start the whole process.
Sure.
They pick 9 times plus every single year. Even this year, having traded away everything, they're already slated to pick like 8 times with the comp picks. They'll probably get another 1 or 2 by trading down. They pick a lot. Now, they're not picking high. They're getting rid of the valuable ones, but they're translating them into Matthew Stafford and Jalen Ramsey and like important parts of this team. And they are one of the highest teams in the league in terms of the percentage of their roster that is homegrown drafted talent. They are still finding contributions from these lower down guys. Now, the question is, what happens when they miss on everything for like 2 years straight? But that I don't think is the same thing as just
but that
all
happens
in here.
Though. Like that's literally
sure. But that's the same. But that question I think is also applicable to anybody. Like what happens if you crap out in the draft 2 straight years?
Yeah, but I think like the Patriots literally did crap out for like a decade on the draft, but because they were disciplined with how they spend their money and where they allocated, and they obviously had Brady, but I think the Rams would try to argue with you that Stafford and McVay are sort of still in that cluster with Brady and Belichick.
Yeah.
Like the hard part becomes like if you're not disciplined with future resources, it only takes one of these things, right? It only takes one Frank Clark. It only takes one Odell Beckham Jr. It only takes and we look at this, we say, oh, they prefer a sure thing. And it's like, yeah, but sure things are expensive and they're not 100%.
Sure.
And so to me, I think that's where the tricky part is. Now, the hard part of this is if you're right, Sam, then fine. But you're not allowed to optimize.
But in fairness to my point.
Yeah, but in fairness to my point, you're not allowed to optimize. You're not allowed to pick the Super Bowl you win, right?
Sure.
You're in many ways you're allowed to pick the year where you're the best team. And those things are very correlated, but they're only loosely so. And that's why when you look at like all the Super Bowls in the history, the Chiefs lost their 2 Super Bowls. 2020, they were the best team in the league. 2018, they were probably the best team in the league, and they lost both years. 2019 was their kind of meh year. They won the Ravens Super Bowl that year. You have to be in contention for multiple years.
Well, yeah, it's a window thing. And the last point here, because we got to move on, but I don't hate this because when you look at 2022 and 2023, the drafts are they look like a war zone right now with the Rams. It's just it's all over the place. They don't have a lot of picks as of right now. But 2024 and beyond, that's all still intact. And when you look at it, you look at Matthew Stafford's deal. He's probably going to be around for 3 years. Jalen Ramsey's got an out in 3 years. Aaron Donald's got an out in 3 years. Like, they have set up their window to where this is it. We have this season, next season, and 2023, and then most likely that's the window. And they're going all in for that window, and they're still preserving beyond that. That's why I'm okay with it. We got to move on to Jordan Love.
Just one last point.
Go ahead.
That I think is the bigger question. It's not what happens if they miss in a couple of drafts. It's what happens the next time when they trade the 2 first-round picks for the next Matthew Stafford. If that guy craps out, the whole thing falls apart.
Then they've got to stay disciplined to this is the window.
They just need to they need to hit on those high-value, high-risk
If they go beyond
picks.
that, I think that's when we start to get in a lot of trouble. Aaron Rodgers made a lot of news this week for I'll say a lot of things, but the big one is that he's not going to be playing today because he tested positive for COVID-19. Now, I'll start with Jordan Love. I'll start this conversation off with Jordan Love. What do we think about this? He's getting his first start. Obviously, we have said a lot of words about Jordan Love since he was a first-round draft pick. Aaron Rodgers has said a lot of words about Jordan Love, I feel like, since he was a first-round draft pick. But now he gets his chance. Packers are playing the Chiefs today. What do we think about this?
I think Jordan Love with Matt LaFleur, somebody who I hold in high esteem, 33-7 since being the head coach of the Packers, one of the best, highest-rated guys in our play caller ranking, et cetera, et cetera. I think if Jordan Love would have gone anywhere else, I would have been out on him a little bit. And pre-draft, I thought he was more like pick 40. I didn't think he was pick 25. I did not think he was trade up and
a lot of people agreed with you.
Trade up, piss Aaron Rodgers off worthy, right? Ultimately now it looks like Aaron Rodgers is probably a little bit more culpable for that relationship being sour than anybody else. But coaching makes such a difference. And so, and opponents you face make such a big difference. So, insofar as today's game, Kansas City, I think Jordan Love plays well today. And I think Aaron Jones plays well today. I think Devontae Adams plays well today. I think the Chiefs are in for, like, we all say, oh, this is the first lucky break the Chiefs have gotten all year. And that's right. I mean, the market moved 6-7 points on this. But it's not a lock that the Chiefs are going to win this game.
Look, Jordan Love might not be a great quarterback right now. You can see why a team drafted him in the first round, because the high end of what he could do was special. And if you're of the persuasion that that's all important, you actually have a pretty good record recently of those guys working out. So I can kind of get it. But the more important part is the Chiefs. Like, that defense, all the things we said a week ago and how bad that defense is still true. One game where they got to beat up on a Giants offensive line that, like, wasn't really there doesn't count. Like, it doesn't change all the things that are still true.
Now, the Packers' offensive line is also banged up.
Sure, but they've been good while banged up. Like, that offensive line banged up is still okay. The Giants' offensive line, when banged up, might as well not show up on game day. So the Chiefs' defense is still terrible. And regardless of, like, where Jordan Love is in his development and how close he is to Aaron Rodgers and all the things he can do, you could spend, like, the entire game plan could just be, here are the 3 numbers of the players you need to target. Like, number 49, throw the ball in his direction. That's all you need.
I didn't know you did that.
Just target Daniel Sorensen every time. And if he's not available, target Ben Neiman. And if he's not available, like, just find the guy that's terrible.
We're going to get a deeper dive preview into that game a little bit later in the show. And so I know that we've got more words on that. I know I probably cut you off with it. But you wrote an article this week, and I want to get into this conversation. It was a mid-season all-pro article. And you went through offense and defense. You picked out who was some of the best performing players this season. And so I just kind of highlighting it here. Tom Brady at quarterback, Derrick Henry running back. You've got Devontae Adams, you've got Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews is tight end. I thought that was very interesting. But we've got the offense there on the screen so everybody can see it. It feels like there's a lot of really, really strong names on this list here, Sam.
Yeah, and of course, the team is perfect. There are no possible areas where you could argue for anybody else. It's the perfect all-pro team.
And with that, I'm going to ask Eric to pick out as somebody who wasn't on the list. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, on offense, like, I think you probably have to give Kyle Pitts a little bit more credit. Like, I think...
All the way to an all-pro? Like a mid-season all-pro?
I think he's been that good.
Hang on, what position are we putting him in to start with?
Oh,
well,
great
tight
question.
End, but like,
great question.
I guess if you do confine this to just guys that put their hand in the dirt, then there's like 6 tight ends in the NFL, right? So,
and they're all beautiful.
And I do think, look, Mark Andrews has gone from a guy who I thought was just getting layups. Like, that offense just got him layups, and he's not very good. Like, he's just a beneficiary of this. I don't think that's true anymore. I think Mark Andrews is a legitimate good football player, and I think them extending him and all that was sharp, and they're using him well. The passing game for the Ravens is pretty damn good. But I would put Pitts there just because with that offense, we didn't talk about Ridley, but Ridley stepping away from football, no Julio Jones, learning a new offense, being a rookie, that physical tight end is a tough position to play physically right out of college. And that's why you've only seen like one 1,000-yard tight end coming in his rookie year. And he's going to be that second guy. I think he deserves it.
The 2 things about him, though, are 1, like, a huge proportion of his production is one game. And 2, he's not a tight end. Like, you can't put him in at tight end. You have to put him in either as a receiver or as, the flex position on offense, which is where you just shoehorn the extra guy you want to get on the team.
Sure, right.
And I don't know that he would get, like, at that point, you're now going up against the likes of, Deebo Samuel and Devontae Adams. And, like, I don't think he takes it against those guys. Like, Mark Andrews is your target. And the problem there is he's an actual tight end and you're a receiver.
My submission here for guys that have been omitted from this list would actually be Jamar Chase. And I picked out Jamar Chase because when I looked at him versus Devontae Adams, obviously different season situations for these guys, but Jamar Chase, he's got more receiving yards, he's got more 20-yard plays, he's got more 40-yard plays, and he's got more touchdowns. And so, Devontae Adams is wide receiver 1 in the NFL right now. I mean, clearly over the last couple of years, he's proven how good he is. But for a 2021 mid-season award, I gotta have Jamar Chase in this list.
Yeah.
That was the guy that I thought that could have been in there.
Jamar Chase has been the highest impact rookie in the NFL,
Yeah,
other than
absolutely.
maybe Mac Jones. But
Yes.
this is a quarterback position. But no one has changed the complexion of their team, and thus the complexion of the NFL more than Jamar Chase.
Right.
And he probably deserves at least a look here.
He's been incredible, and I think he's right in the argument as well. Devontae Adams has him in terms of yards per route run. So in terms of actual opportunity, how much production are you getting for the snaps you're on the field? Devontae Adams has been more productive.
One thing we do have to worry about is 2 wide receiver offenses give rise to higher yards per route runs, because there's. And the Bengals run sort of more of a spread out 3 wide receiver offense. So that statistic, I think, once you adjust for that, they're probably going to be similar. But you're right. Adams is fantastic. He has a lifetime achievement award on this list,
and also has a markedly higher PFF grade. Right, hasn't dropped as many passes. Like Devontae Adams is the best NFL receiver right now.
Oh, he's a company man. That's good. That means he'll stick around for a while. He's going off the grades. All right, let's look at defense. We got Cam Hayward on this list. We got Aaron Donald. We got Myles Garrett. Max Crosby's on here. Devondre Campbell, Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, Casey Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, Kevin Byard, Jordan Poyer, and we got Nate Hobbs as the flex there. I like the Nate Hobbs shout out there. What did you think about this list, Sam, when you were going over it?
This was the side of the ball where there's a ton of interesting names, like guys you just would not have possibly put there a year ago or coming into the season. Devondre Campbell being the best linebacker in the NFL.
How about that, huh?
After 3 consecutive seasons with a grade of about 50 is one of the most insane things to have happened this season.
Yeah, it does show you the folly of building around defense, doesn't it? Right, with the names are not very stable.
They can change every year.
Yeah, exactly.
No
and Nate Hobbs, I looked at our PFF WAR metrics, 6-7 weeks in, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I look him up, and I see some, I pride myself on knowing the names, at least in the NFL, but I was like, oh my goodness, but he's certainly deserving here. Devondre Campbell's a big example of this, right? We've shown, through player tracking and all that kind of stuff, it's the linebacker situation is very much about the scheme you're in, and this is the first linebacker to play well for Green Bay since. A long time. Back when they had Clay playing inside linebacker, might have been the last time. And so good on him. Eric Kendricks is obviously a mainstay here. He's been somebody whose grade has been up and down in our system for a while, but he's certainly trending and a real steal for the Minnesota Vikings at $10 million a year.
I feel like Trayvon Diggs has to be on this list.
Of course
he's not on this list. Jalen Ramsey is. What's it, the corners? It's Jalen, Casey Hayward, and then Nate Hobbs is on there. I feel like Trayvon has to be on here, and I get it. He's given up the second most yards of any corner in the NFL, and that's a big glaring thing for him. But by far the most interceptions, most pick sixes. He's tied with Mike Edwards for it. And when you look at him versus Ramsey, who's on here, I know these are different kinds of corners, and everybody in the world, I think, would tell you they take Jalen Ramsey over Trayvon Diggs. But he's got the same, basically the same forcing completion rate. He's got the same touchdowns given up against him, and the yards I feel like is the thing that everybody looks at, and for good reason. It's an important stat. But when it comes to recognizing a midseason guy for what he has done in the turnover category, even if you don't think it's sustainable, a midseason All-Pro award, I feel like Trayvon's
I just don't think
here.
he's no Nate Hobbs in my opinion.
Of course, yeah.
But
after you've done your WAR research and
exactly,
win above replacement, he's no Nate Hobbs.
I can't argue with Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, but I will say that if I wanted to put somebody sort of as a flex, I might put Randy Gregory in, 29 pressures so far this year. He's been involved in 5 or 6 sacks. But I think the most important thing is that defense is we're going into week 2 against the Chargers. We're all thinking to ourselves, this is a mash unit. They're 0-1, and they've won every single game since. No DeMarcus Lawrence for most of the season. Micah Parsons has been playing kind of weird. He's playing every position out there. I think Randy Gregory has changed football games this year and deserves at least a little bit of recognition.
Wow, look at that.
I'm glad though that you started off with. I can't argue with Max Crosby.
But
and Myles Garrett.
He didn't make second team either.
But that's one of the biggest things about an All-Pro team, right? Is anyone that didn't make the list is being snubbed and they suck.
Right.
It's look. There can be, if there are 5 good players at a specific position, one of them isn't going to make either the first or the second team All-Pro, and that doesn't mean they weren't great. And in particular, on defensive end, Myles Garrett and Max Crosby are just 1 and 2 by a mile. Garrett has been determining games by what he's been doing, and Crosby leads the NFL.
Has anybody did Max Crosby just order this, because he's gotten one of the easiest slates of opposing tackles to play.
The first good tackle he played was week 7.
Yeah, and it doesn't get much hard. they go Kansas City is like twice down the stretch. That's Lucas Niang and Orlando Brown. We've seen their limitation. Like, it's not going to be hard. Like, he might just, he might make millions of dollars based upon playing some kind of bad tackles.
Right. All right, let's get into these game previews. We're going to give you some of the best bets. Make sure you get out of the weekend with a little bit of extra money. We're going to preview all these big games here. But before we do, got to talk to the good people about our friends over at Pristine Auction. This is your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. It's all auction-style stuff. So you could search for a player, you could search for a team, and I guarantee that you'll be able to find something that you really love. Starts at $1. These bids start at $1, which means you've got the chance to get some really big steals for some really great stuff. Use the promo code PFF when you sign up. You're going to get $10 off whatever the first auction is that you win. Not just the first one that you bid on, it's going to be the first one that you win. Pristine Auction. Go check it out. Your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. And this is the last week. Later on this show, we are giving away, grab it, we are giving away this signed Davante Adams jersey. That's mid-season All-Pro wide receiver Davante Adams
and
right here.
Given how much separation he gets, that jersey hasn't been touched. That's clean. That's a clean jersey.
It is. This is a very clean jersey. This bad boy can be yours. All you got to do is tweet at us, tag at PFF and at Pristine Auction. Give us your hottest but also best NFL take. Like, you can't just be an egregious take. You've got to give us something that's bold, that we would also believe in. So we're going to pick the one that's got kind of like the best combination. We're going to be doing that at the end of the show. So you've got one more show to get your takes in at PFF, at Pristine Auction. Win yourself a signed Davante Adams jersey. First game preview that we're getting into, which was the Packers. That would have been a good transition there for us. Browns and Bengals. Need a little bit of a bounce back here for both of these teams, right? I mean, for very different reasons. I still think that the Bengals are on track to have a better year than a lot of people expected. Cleveland now has got to stop the skid here. And I think that we're getting, it's worry time in Cleveland, not just because of the Odell Beckham headlines, but because of a lot of other stuff too. So Sam, when you look at this game, where's your mind going when it comes to the spread? Cincinnati at home, they're favored by 2.5. What do you think about that line and who you taking?
Yeah, I mean, what jumped out to me is, like, I just wanted to ask Eric, what was this line heading into the season?
Yeah.
Because it feels like this couldn't be more different from where we thought these two teams were going to be at the start of the year. We were anticipating the Bengals might be better than last year, but would still be rooted to the bottom of the division. The Browns are supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and all of a sudden, the Bengals are comfortably favored, and it feels like that's an overcorrection to me.
Yeah, this is another one where this line was 4.5 in the preseason. I talked about the last time in fairness to my take.
In fairness to you.
When it was, the Bengals against the Ravens, I talked about the year-to-year change was about 6 points. This represents that.
Yeah.
And, I think some people are betting the Browns again. When I submitted this, I said Cleveland +3. That's no longer available. I do think if you could ever have gotten Cleveland at 3 -110, that was the pick. You probably want to tease Cleveland up now to 8 or so, but yeah, this is a very interesting. Sort of going into last week, there was a chance 5-3 versus 6-2. Now it sort of feels like a little bit of a downer. Which one of these coaching staffs, Stefanski with Cleveland or Zach Taylor with Cincinnati, can bounce the team back here? Mm-hmm. Because that to me, that's part of the thing. And when you're trying to contend, when you haven't contended in forever, how do you bounce back from disappointment?
We also need the narrative to keep going, right? Like, Odell Beckham immediately stops playing and the Browns go back to being like a Super Bowl contender. Baker Mayfield looks like an
that's what happened out here last year. This is where he tore his ACL,
right.
And then Baker had his best game.
Exactly. The Browns are still a dominant team running the ball on offense. They can still rack up a ton of yards. They are second in the NFL in explosive play rate. We know Baker Mayfield has been better when Odell Beckham is not there. We just don't know why. And at this point, it no longer matters. But now he isn't there. There is a real chance that Baker Mayfield plays significantly better now.
Seth Galina did a really great job kind of pointing out some of the plays where you look at it and you go, yeah, Odell is wide open. And it's there, but Baker just doesn't look for it. Like, it's not even close to the progression of where his eyes are going. And we don't really know what that is, like why that's the case, because there are so many times when, especially when he's a backside player, where he will be open and Baker's just not looking for him. So it just clearly was something that was not working out. He was not going to get the ball there. I think that certainly when you look at what the Bengals have been able to do this year, how explosive they've been when passing the ball. We already talked about Jamar Chase and how he's been a big catalyst towards that. We all think that regression is coming, right? And it has a little bit so far from the red hot start that they had during the season. But I still think they have a good receiving core around them. So, like, even when you're not hitting Jamar Chase nearly as much as you were at the beginning of the season, you still got Tyler Boyd. You still got T. Higgins. You still have Auden Tate. Yes, I'm giving a shout out to Auden Tate while Ian's not on the show. Big shout out. So I think that you've got the room there to when, all right, maybe it's not Jamar Chase being a complete takeover player. You have the rest of the offense. So I'm taking the Bengals in this one. I'm taking the Bengals to cover that 2.5. What are you guys taking here?
Yeah, I'm taking Cleveland. To your point about the regression here, like one of our interns, Tage Seth, he wrote an article. He basically plotted ADOT, average depth of target versus yards after the catch, yak. And Jamar Chase is just an outlier there. He's got high ADOT and he's got high yak.
Right.
And does that reduce? Because what we've seen in other offenses that have grown up fast, Kansas City being I think the quintessential one. Once the big plays stop happening, and it's not, the big plays don't stop happening because you suck. They stop happening because they stop happening, right? Do you have the patience, to your point, to go to Tyler Boyd? Do you have the patience to go to T. Higgins?
Right, yeah.
Do you have the patience
That's the next step.
to throw the ball underneath? Because the Ravens game didn't blow up because the Cincinnati Bengals offense was consistently successful. It blew up because they made huge plays, right? And so the question is Burrow company, can they be disciplined? And I think in this particular game, Cleveland has our second highest opponent adjusted grade on defense. I think they have the horses to give Cincinnati fits today. And so I'm going to take them as an underdog.
Yeah, I'm with the Browns as well. I think that's where you start to look and you say, well, when the big plays disappear and you have to rely on just being more efficient and being better, how do you match up with the opposition? And the Browns have all of a sudden got an actual ton of depth at cornerback, which was a weakness a year ago. It was just Denzel Ward, and once you got beyond Denzel Ward, it was a problem. Now, their number 2 and number 3 corners each have PFF coverage grades of above 70, and they've been playing a lot because injuries have sort of forced them onto the field to find out what they are. So all of a sudden, Cleveland has a ton of depth to be able to go match up with Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and that Bengals receiving core much better than they would have had going back a few months.
That's the ace in the hole Tampa Bay had last year, right? That they had tons of secondary players, and then their quarterback got hot, right? Obviously Cleveland, we don't believe that Baker can get Tom Brady hot. But if you're going to go and beat some of these Buffalo teams with a lot of receivers, Cincinnati, a lot of receivers, you need what you're talking about. Right. And the Browns have it. And, they obviously have to figure things out on the offensive side of the ball, but the defensive side of the ball has it.
Anybody can get Tom Brady hot with enough plastic surgery.
Oh. Well, or
Hello.
the TB12
there
method.
it is. There it is. Oh, yeah, you got to get the diet.
I don't know which one it is, though.
Well, that's the point. You never know.
You never know.
Maybe why are they different? Maybe chapter 12 of the TB12 method, I haven't read the book, would be plastic surgery.
George has it on his desk.
That's
of course. We'll go borrow it.
Cardinals 49ers is a game that I know a lot of people are going to want us to chime in on because I feel like the line's been all over the place, right? Kyler Murray listed as questionable. Not sure if he's even going to go in this game. He's going to test it on game day. I haven't been fed any kind of update information quite yet, but that's what it feels like it is still at. Niners right now at home, favored by 3.5. So that makes me feel like a lot of people feel like Kyler Murray is not going to play in this game. If that's the case, Sam, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, it feels like the longer this has gone on, the less confident anybody is that Kyler Murray is going to be playing.
It feels like the Dak situation, right? Last week.
Throughout the entire
the line movement almost identical, by the way, to the
for Dak.
Yeah, once it got past 8% of games land on 3 that are favored by 3. So that's a humongous jump, and so it is very reminiscent of what happened in the Dak. Once Dak found out he wasn't playing, it went from 2.5 to 3.5, 4. You're sort of seeing that now.
Yeah, I think it's still a really fascinating game. The first thing is just concentrating on the 49ers. They are going to have a real problem winning the game, even without Kyler Murray, if Jimmy Garoppolo can't play well again, right? Last week, he had a PFF grade of 80. It was basically his first good game of the season. Yeah. And it came coincidentally right at the point where if you didn't do that, you're probably getting benched for Trey Lance. Because your own coach is being like, I guess Jimmy G's the quarterback right now.
Yeah. Right.
Jimmy G needed that game to keep the job, and which means now he probably needs that game basically every week to keep the job. Otherwise, Trey Lance is going to get put in the first time Jimmy G regresses and has one of those bad games. So is that going to happen here, or can we get this sort of sustained run of better Jimmy Garoppolo play, which we at least know he's capable of, right? This team went to the Super Bowl before. Jimmy G has played well in this offense. It just hasn't happened for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. And like you look up and Jimmy G's averaging 8.3 yards per attempt, just like he always does, just like Nick Mullins did, just like and it's so hard because like the Kyle Shanahan thing is just so hard to unpack. They put up good numbers. They run a very unique scheme, the most unique in the NFL per our metrics. And yet, like, there's just always something missing. And some of it came together last week, but they didn't score a touchdown until the second half against the Bears, right? And like, to me, like, I just don't know. Arizona does seem to be well coached up right now. The linebackers are doing big things. They've drafted and signed, linebackers for years now. They should stop being so bad there. This feels kind of like Vikings-Cowboys, where, one team has a clear path to a win, but they might step on their own feet. Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, I think the only side you can bet here is a very cheap Cardinals at plus. By the time it gets to +4, at game time.
Yeah.
I think that it's funny that the script kind of works out like this because, you mentioned the Cardinals linebackers. They're the second worst team in the NFL right now when it comes to yards given up on the ground per attempt. It's almost 5 yards they're giving up per carry against other teams. And I think that certainly bodes well for Jimmy Garoppolo because it's not going to force them to say, hey, Jimmy, you got to go win it with your arm. I feel like San Francisco's going to be able to win it on the ground, but this also could have been a nice Trey Lance game if he was the quarterback because he would have been able to help the rushing attack. And so I really feel like whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo or whether it was Trey Lance, certainly without Kyler Murray, this is a pretty good script for the Niners to win this game.
Yeah, like I feel less good about picking Arizona than I did before, but this feels like, part of the thing you guys always say is that the earlier you can bet a game, the better, because you get when the market isn't quite as its most efficient and you get the edge on it. This is one of those situations, though, where actually the later you can make the bet, the better. Yeah. Exactly like Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Assuming what we think is going to happens and Kyler Murray doesn't play, that number is only going in one direction. And if you think that the Cardinals, even without Kyler Murray, have a good shot of winning this game, which I think is true, the later you get that bet in, the better your odds are.
Yeah, the hard part, though, is that the books don't want to open up that big of a middle, right? Like I said on the show the other day, like I thought that Dallas would have been 6.5-point underdogs to Minnesota on the road if Cooper Rush played. It only got to 4. And the reason it only gets to 4 is they don't want to open up the guy who bet Minnesota at +2.5, also being able to come back on Dallas +6.5 and having that humongous middle and being able to win both. So they oftentimes will cut it off at a certain point and just take the liability because the NFL is weird and Dallas freaking beats Minnesota and all the people that piled on money on Minnesota and they get their money back. And so I think that's interesting, right? Because your point is if you like the Niners, if you like Arizona, wait until you get the +4. If you like the Niners, but if you like the Niners on the other side, you better now. Yeah. Like it's not going to get any better for you.
Right.
Speaking of early bets, I'm very curious about this one because Packers-Chiefs is the next game that we're talking about here. Obviously, we spoke a little bit on Jordan Love and Rodgers out with COVID-19. What was this line before Rodgers tested positive? Because now it's Chiefs, they're favored by 7. So I'm curious, like, how big was the swing here from Rodgers to Love?
Yeah, and that's people betting on Jordan Love, by the way, because the look ahead for this was Kansas City -2.5. Kansas City plays like a bunch of yellow-bellied pigs on Monday. The number moves to
Tell us how you really feel.
Green Bay -1. So Green Bay.
The game they won, by the way.
Yeah, Green Bay. Yeah, the Giants. I mean, you beat the Clapper. So Green Bay's favored by 1 on Pinnacle Sports like early in the week, and I thought to myself, am I ever going to get a chance to bet on Patrick Mahomes as a home underdog ever again? And so but I didn't take it. And then all of a sudden it gets out to 8.5. Like basically with the news. And now people are kind of looking to be like, when's the last time the Chiefs really opened up on a good team?
Right.
And so now it's back down to 7. I think the only bettable play here is probably to tease Kansas City down to -1 because I don't think you can go with Jordan Love first start without getting the full touchdown. You're not getting the 7.5. But I don't think Kansas City's going to win this game by multiple scores if they win at all.
Yeah, I think there is a very real chance that Jordan Love comes out of this game looking pretty good. Okay, Arrowhead is a nightmare of a place to play in from practical terms as an opposition quarterback. The noise, you're going to have to use silent count, all these kinds of things. Those are bad for a rookie or for effectively a rookie quarterback, a guy making his first start in the NFL. On the other hand, their defense stinks. So that's great.
Right.
This could not be a better team in terms of what you are going to be facing to do your stuff.
And the Chiefs struggle the most with these like Shanahanian schemes. LaFleur's a great coach, but he's adapted the Shanahan scheme. Teams that are, and the Packers are soft on defense, but I think they're physical on offense. And the physical offensive teams, the Titans, the Browns, like teams like that give the Chiefs fits because their linebackers suck. And like they can't like, and they're talking this week about how they're going to play Anthony Hitchens now that he's healthy. So, I mean, you watch Willie Gay get interceptions in 2 straight games, you're like, back to the bench, you're too fast. I don't know what they're thinking.
Too fast.
But, like, this is a game where I think that it's going to feel like the Browns game, where they need to get one stop, the Chiefs do.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you get Devontae Adams back, so you have the best wide receiver in the NFL, midseason All-Pro.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Going to be playing for Jordan Love, 1 drop in 72 targets this season so far. So you're going to have phenomenal help on the offense. You've got good players against bad defenders.
Barring the Chiefs, just going full Kansas City Chiefs and like going exactly back to the world beaters that we thought they were supposed to be going into this season. From what the Chiefs have been so far this year, it feels like you're right. Like, it's crazy to think that the Chiefs would blow a team out like this, even a team with Jordan Love that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers. And especially when you look at that defense, you've talked about a couple of times on this show previously, the average amount of points that they're giving up per drive, and the most in the NFL. Like, the Chiefs defense just cannot stop anybody. Well, something that really might help a Jordan Love script in this game is the Chiefs, very similar to the Cardinals, very high yards per attempt average that they're giving up this year. They're bottom 5 in the NFL, 4.6 per carry. So with that being the case, Jordan Love, you would think if we preview this game at the beginning of the year, you would think, okay, if Jordan Love is starting this game, he's got to come out throwing just to keep up with the Chiefs. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
They can sit back. They can hand the ball off to Jordan Love or to Aaron Jones. They can get easy passes over to Devontae Adams, whatever it is, and you can keep this game close for, say, the first half while Jordan Love kind of gets his feet wet, gets some confidence in him. And then, hey, if you need a drive at the end to win the game, that's every NFL game. But I feel like they can give Jordan Love some confidence because of how bad the Chiefs are.
And you love that situation when you're a dog by more than a touchdown. That means that not one score can beat you. A few interesting nuggets about this game before we go. The Chiefs did catch a break with Tongan being injured because they are one of the worst teams in the NFL in covering the tight end. They're actually they're above average at covering wide receivers and yards per. Like, that's who they funnel targets to the middle of the field. They do have Aaron Jones. It's going to be really hard. Like, I think Aaron Jones is going to catch 10 balls today. I don't think that's but you look at this, compare this to Monday night. The Chiefs were favored by 11.5 against the New York Giants, who were not full strength, but they had their quarterback. The Packers, this shows how much people care about Matt LaFleur and how good they are. I mean, this is a 4.5 point difference. So the betting markets like the Packers 4.5 point better than the Giants with their actual starting quarterback. So the market is respecting Green Bay here, and in my opinion, they should be.
Yeah, for years I was saying that the Baltimore Ravens were the team that was sort of tailor-made to beat Kansas City because they could sit on the ball, they could run that ball control offense, keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes, and they could never get it done until this year because all of a sudden Kansas City is not efficient and explosive enough to beat that. So the Browns should have beaten them, ended up throwing it away. We've seen teams all of a sudden, the Ravens finally got over that hump against Kansas City. Now with all those turnovers that the Chiefs are creating, they're not able to overcome a team that will frustrate them and put them on the sideline.
The Bills blew them out using the same structure that got them beat twice last year.
Right.
Because the Chiefs last year were patient with them and scored points, and this year they're just not that way anymore.
Kendall, it is after 11:30 a.m. on the East Coast, which means I know that we have some inactives to talk about. What do we got?
Yep, we do. We've got some news. So Drew Lock, he is in COVID-19 protocols. James Robinson is out. Harrison Smith, that just came down too. He was put on the reserve COVID-19 list as well today. He'll be out. Sammy Watkins and Latavius Murray both are out, and Saquon Barkley's out. Most importantly, Tua Tagovailoa is out today, and they did not activate a third. They don't have a third available quarterback today as well. He has a fracture in the middle of his in his middle finger of his throwing hand, so he is not playing.
What happens if Jacoby Brissett goes down? Who plays quarterback? Do they have a wide receiver?
The emergency quarterback.
Like it could have been Jarvis Landry back when Jarvis Landry was on the Dolphins.
For like a decade, that was my dream. Whenever like one or two guys go down the NFL, it's like, who's the emergency quarterback? It's the tight end that played once in high school. That Kendall Hinton game last year ruined that dream for me forever.
Okay, now I really want to see Mike Gesicki try to play quarterback because I feel like he would be the most awkward throwing motion dude to ever come in and play quarterback in an NFL game.
Right, back when the third quarterback rule was a thing, right, where the guy couldn't, if he went in the game, you couldn't put your other two guys back in until the fourth quarter. There was always that guy, right? Like
Wait,
Brian
what is this? What is this rule?
So before 2011, the third quarterback was dressed.
Yes.
But he was inactive. And so if you put him in, and that was why the Todd Collins, in the NFC Championship game, Bears-Packers, they put Todd Collins in before they put Caleb Haney in, because Caleb Haney, technically, if you put Haney in, then the other two guys are ineligible to even come back in the game.
Right? What?
Yes, that was how it is. And then in 2011...
Why would this be a rule? My mind is blown right now.
Yeah,
what's the point of this?
Well, to develop quarterbacks. And I think it's actually, there's evidence to say, because now teams, they don't dress a third quarterback because they never get in.
Sure.
And oftentimes now the guy's not even on the 53, he's on the practice squad. And those guys move around now. And like not to get on a long rant, but like look at all the guys who were Super Bowl players in the aughts. Brad Johnson was once a third string quarterback. Jake Delhomme was once a third string quarterback. Kurt Warner was once a third string quarterback. The list goes on. Tony Romo was a third string quarterback. Now, how many of these guys are developmental guys? Almost none of them, right? So the new CBA, I think a lot of that has to do with the rookie wage scale, but some of that has to do with the fact that teams don't keep developmental third quarterbacks anymore.
Okay, all right, we're learning. We're learning on this. I'm learning on the show at least. Vikings Ravens.
Josh Johnson was a fourth string quarterback for the Bucs in like 08.
Hey, people don't forget
people don't
about
forget
the NFL legend that is Josh Johnson. Yeah. Vikings Ravens. Next game that I want to talk about here. Baltimore at home. They're favored by 6. Vikings coming off a week where they lost to Cooper Rush. Not ideal. We're, I think, hoping that the Ravens get back to what was some early season hype of Lamar being an MVP and Baltimore really going on a run, potentially winning that division. I know that all of those things are still in the cards, but there's a decent matchup here between these two teams. What do you think about this line, Sam, and who would you be taking?
To me, the interesting thing is, how does Minnesota keep this game close? Because we know they will. They play everybody to a ridiculous one-score game, whether they're the best team in the NFL or the worst team in the NFL. We saw that last week. They had the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys and somehow conspired to lose the game. There is no reason this game should be close. The Baltimore Ravens should win this game comfortably. But because it's the Vikings, they won't. There will be a way that Minnesota keeps it close. And I'm curious what on earth it is. Because even if you just look at the rushing attack of Baltimore, which hasn't even been the thing that it's been in previous years. Like, it's been a compliment this season, not just the bedrock of the offense, but they are number 2 in the NFL in rushing yards before contact on average. The Vikings are 30th on defense in rushing yards before contact on average allowed. The Ravens could just run the ball all day and rack up a ton of points on them.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, the Vikings defense had actually been playing well. Mike Zimmer in his press conference was talking about, like, their first in sacks, 5th and 3rd down defense, 7th in yards. Like, all of those, up there, turnover rate, passing yards allowed, all that kind of stuff. And part of me was thinking to myself, man, the Vikings are going to get killed this week because they didn't learn anything from last week. What they've done since Kirk Cousins has been the quarterback is to limit the risk of that signing looking poorly, right? Because they confine him, they make sure he doesn't make any mistakes, and Kirk hasn't made that many mistakes. And the signing in a vacuum, Kirk's played fantastically, but that puts you in all of these games where it's coming down to a field goal, and that's your fault. That's your fault that these games come down to a field goal when you play the game that close. So I agree with Sam. I like the Vikings +6 in this game. But I also look at Mike Zimmer's press conference, which was clearly defiant, and it was clearly of if they fire me, just let it be known that once Danielle Hunter's out, he's our worst player. Let it be known that when he played, we were great on defense. Blame it on Kirk. Blame it on Spielman. Now Harrison Smith's out. Those are 2 best defensive players other than Eric Kendricks. And again, they just didn't learn from the last game, which is you win and lose as a team, right? You win and lose as a team, and Zimmer throwing the other side of the ball under the bus this week just showed me he didn't learn from it. And they mess around, they're going to find out against the Ravens.
So when I look at this game and this matchup specifically, I think that Harrison Smith being out plays into this, but something that I was kind of looking for the Vikings to really keep this one close. Mark Andrews, I think everybody would agree, he's a big catalyst for that Ravens passing attack. Obviously, Hollywood Brown's the big play guy, but I feel like when you look at Mark Andrews, there's only one tight end in the NFL that has more yards than him so far this season is Travis Kelce, right? And so, Mark Andrews is a big part of this offense. Vikings, fourth best team in the NFL this season at defending the tight end. And so I'm like, okay, if you shut him down a little bit, you rely on a lot of the passing game to run through Marquise Brown, and who knows what the results of that could be. And so I think this game could be close. Harrison Smith being out, I think that goes into it. But I would be taking the Vikings +6. You taking the Vikings +6?
I don't know if I can now. Harrison Smith is such an important part of that defense.
He really is.
And I also kind of like the under, but I don't think I'm going to let that. I bet under earlier the week at 49.5. It's probably going to close at like 51 if the weather stays fine and Harrison Smith's out. We're robbed of a Latavius Murray revenge game in this one because he's out, and Sammy Watkins not being in. Zimmer does the thing every once in a while where he just out-coaches the opposing offense. New Orleans in the playoffs in 19. Remember that Cardinals game on Thursday Night Football? They had no players and they played really well. They played that down to the wire. There's always that in Zimmer, and I feel like I'm betting on that today when I take Minnesota getting a touchdown.
There is almost no reason that this should be a close game. Like, the Baltimore Ravens should win this game by double digits, but the Vikings don't let that happen. Yes. For some reason, they always find a way to keep the score within one score, regardless of who they're playing.
Right.
They could be facing the Houston Texans, the Jags, the Ravens, the Chiefs. It doesn't matter.
They took the Jags to overtime last year. That tells you everything you need to know about the way that this team operates.
So somehow the Vikings are going to end up covering this.
They're going to lose by 3, and it's going to be so much more frustrating if you're a Vikes fan than losing to Cooper Rush, because you're capable of playing a game like this against Baltimore, and if you play that way against the Bengals, against Cooper Rush, against some of the teams you've lost to, then you probably are in the playoff hunt. And right now, they're probably the most likely team to get the 7th spot in the NFC. But you look at their upcoming schedule, it's Baltimore, it's LA Rams, it's rough.
They're going to lose by 3, and that also means they're going to cover 6.
Yeah,
and that's why I got the Vikings +6 in this one. All right, now we're bringing in our main man, DB, Darius Butler. He's joining us here on the show. Darius, how are we doing this week, man?
Doing great. Glad to be here. Happy to be here. We got the technicals working out this week, so I'm happy to be here. What's up, fellas?
Always good when technology is actually on our side. I did want to ask you real quick, because as if this week didn't have enough storylines, your Colts played on Thursday night, so I want to ask you a little bit about that. What'd you think about them coming away with the big win?
Like you said, big win. Every win is a big win, especially at this point in the season. Disappointing loss the week before, got back out there in a short week and handled business. This is what good teams do. Beat teams that they're supposed to beat. Went out there and handled the Jets. Didn't like the fact that we gave up so many yards and points, to Josh Johnson and Mike White as a defense. But on the offense side of the ball, Carson Wentz looked great. Pittman looked great. Taylor looked phenomenal once again. So I'm happy with that offensive line as well. So I'm happy with it. Now we got a mini bye, and we should finish the season strong.
Sam, we talked about this last week. We were like, if it was anything other than Zach Wilson with the Jets, that would have been bad. Well, now Mike White gets hurt. Josh Johnson comes in and throws for 300 yards. So we might be in trouble.
The Mike White experience is less than a week old.
Well, now
we've seen him twice, but it feels like forever.
This last week in the NFL makes everything feel like forever ago. So
now it's literally anything other than Zach Wilson appears to look good,
which is not good.
Which is not possible thing for Zach Wilson. Yeah, it's like Mike White looked good before he went down. Josh Johnson comes in on the back of his, 15 NFL teams and just marches the ball down the field.
I'm a former teammate of his. I think
everybody is.
I think we are too.
John Gruden drafted Josh Johnson for the Bucs.
Yeah.
That's how long Josh Johnson's been around.
If you've played in the NFL in the last 15 years, you are a teammate of Josh Johnson somewhere along the line.
What's the game like? The 7 degrees of Josh Johnson? Every teammate at some point.
He's the Kevin Bacon of the NFL.
Yes, everything can somehow go back to Josh Johnson. So I thought that was funny that he comes in and just absolutely lights it up. So maybe it is Zach Wilson. I don't know. Maybe he won't even be on the Jets next year. Okay, that's a little far. That's a little far.
Wow.
Because I've seen people with those takes.
I think that's a little fun.
Would Zach Wilson be the best quarterback in this coming class? I feel like he would be still, even after all this. And so it's a strange conundrum. I mean, obviously, if you're Zach Wilson, you have any sort of level of self-awareness. You watch what's happening. It's very clear what he wasn't doing and what these guys are doing, which is hit the first receiver when he's open.
Right.
And Wilson was trying to make every play into a touchdown, and these guys are taking what the defense gives them and doing it okay, but not good enough to win in the case of against Darius' Colts, though.
Darius, what do you think about that? I don't want to call it quarterback controversy. I mean, I'm mainly joking when I say all that, but it is a little worrisome, right? When two guys can just come in out of nowhere, especially Josh Johnson here this past week, and operate the offense the way that they've wanted to do it, right? I mean, what do you think about Wilson's situation now?
I mean, hopefully it just gives him, being a starter from day one, regardless of where you're drafted, that's tough to do in the NFL. You come in and you try to do the things that you've always done, the things that got you to that point. But once you get to this level, especially coming from, BYU, it's a huge jump. Once you get to this level, you have to change your mindset of what a good NFL play is. And sometimes that's a 4-yard completion. Sometimes that's a 2-yard run. Regardless of, the situation, sometimes you just have to move and get positive movement for your offense. And obviously, Zach wasn't doing that. Mike White, he faced two defenses who played a lot of zone, a lot of softer schemes that kind of give you those holes that you can take what the defense gives you. And they did a good job of that. And Zach Wilson, holding the ball a little bit too long. It's kind of like some running backs that come in. They want to bounce everything or make everything a 10, 15-yard run. And sometimes the NFL is just going to be a 3-yard run. So I think Zach Wilson, he'll get some different perspective, been on that sideline for a few weeks, but obviously been the second overall pick. He'll have another opportunity to be that starting quarterback. Hopefully he learns from it. And then when it's time to be special, be special. Everybody doesn't have the tools that Zach Wilson has. So that is what will set him apart going forward. But at this point in his career, just take the little plays that the defense gives you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, him talking about the BYU jump, right? The offensive line being so good at BYU. Him looking and going for a touchdown every time, and him being able to get away with it. Hopefully this time on the bench, like Darius said, just a time to kind of reflect and go, oh, yeah, I could just throw a little 3-yard pass. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Let's talk about another game. Titans, Rams. There's a lot of storylines going into this one. Obviously, Von Miller coming over to the Los Angeles Rams. I definitely want to get Darius' take on that. But overall, fellas, I'll start with you, Sam. What do you think about this game preview overall? The Titans on a big-time roll, but now they're without Derrick Henry, and they're facing one of the best teams in the NFC. What do you think about this matchup here?
Yeah, we're going to get a much better idea of how this Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill dynamic worked. For right at the start, we were saying, well, Derrick Henry's great, but he only started to look great when Ryan Tannehill arrived. He was number 11 in the NFL in rushing right up until Marcus Mariota went out of the lineup. Tannehill comes in, immediately Derrick Henry becomes the best running back in the NFL. But I think the longer that's happened, you've been wondering, well, what if Derrick Henry had kind of set the stage for just a competent quarterback to make this all look great? And then Derrick Henry starts to reap the rewards of the things that he was always doing all the way along. So the Titans are number one by a mile in the number of 8-man fronts that they've been looking at over the rest of the season. Ryan Tannehill is the number one graded quarterback in the NFL with play action. How much does that dynamic change now that it's an old man Adrian Peterson versus Derrick Henry?
Darius, what do you think about this one?
I mean, I think obviously the offense is going to look completely different. Julio's going to have to be healthy and be a weapon. A.J. Brown have been coming along, having huge games. But like you said, it's going to be a lot more on Tannehill's plate. And now defense is going to come in and say, hey, A.J. Brown's going to be the number one weapon now. It's not going to be 22. Every week, every time you're going to face these Titans for the last few years, it's been, number 22s all over the defensive meeting room. So now that's going to be different. Every time I bet against Tannehill, the Titans, or picked against him against a team that I thought was better this year, the Titans have proved me wrong. So maybe they continue to do so. Tannehill has had some glimpses where he's played very, very well, but I feel like in the biggest games against the best opponents, that's obviously when Derrick Henry put his cape on and put the team on his back. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Derrick Henry somehow, some way, finds his way back in his lineup when they make the playoffs. and potentially win this division. So it'll be interesting to see how this Titans team grows.
They said this morning, that's not out of the question. The report this morning was, okay, he's probably out for the year, but they weren't going to say, yeah, for sure. They're going to, if they make the playoffs and make a deep run, they're going to make it available for this guy to come back.
It's crazy. This team is like a weird loss in New York to the Jets, away from being on a 7-game winning streak. And I think for the last few weeks, we've been looking at them as like a potential letdown spot, right?
Yeah,
so Buffalo into Kansas City and then Indy, and there was always sort of a reason why they would avoid the letdown spot, right? There was, Kansas City had kicked them out of the playoffs 2 years ago. Indianapolis, that was a chance to basically win the division. We have them with over 95% chance to win their division. This one might be what's baked into the market. It went from 6.5 on Sunday night to 7.5 because of the Henry and the Von Miller news. It's now back kind of settling in at 7. Darius, what do you think as far as, I want to ask a couple questions. Like, what do you think of this number, 7, the spread here? But also, what do you think of the Rams sort of going all in on this particular season? Do you think that they should be sort of maybe spreading out the risk a little bit more, or just concentrating on 2021?
I mean, I love it. Honestly, I love it. You saw the Chiefs do it to some extent a couple years ago. You obviously saw the Bucs do it, bringing in guys to kind of, obviously around Brady with a roster that was already pretty decent. You're just going all in. You take a chance. It's so hard to get a championship or have even a realistic window. And now you went out and you put your chips on the table to get Stafford. You did the same thing with Ramsey, and now you went and got another piece with Von Miller. So now you have 3 guys who are first ballot Hall of Famers. I think Matt Stafford, if he can somehow win a Super Bowl, he'll be in the conversation as well. So you put all your chips in the middle of the table. You say we're going to try our best to get one now, and we'll break it up or figure it out down the line after this window is closed. But Sean McVay, he got Jared Goff to a Super Bowl. And, I don't think Jared Goff is a terrible quarterback. But, you got Jared Goff to a Super Bowl. So I know he feels now, okay, I got a guy at this quarterback position that can really win us one. Let me get everything possible around him to give us our best chance. So I love it. If I'm in that locker room, I love it, especially because we're losing all of our top draft picks. So I'm a little less worried on draft day now. So
that's a great point. That's a great point. Really quick, you said Rams favored by 7 in this one. Darius, who would you take? Titans and the Rams favored by 7.
Because of what I said earlier about picking against the Titans all year, and they've always, even early on, they went to Seattle and got a win.
Right.
I've thought about taking them as a dog, but I'm going to go with the Rams on this one. The Rams on this one, what Stafford and Kupp and that whole offense is doing. They're bringing a guy like Von Miller, even if he doesn't play, I'm taking the Rams in this one.
Yeah, same. I'm taking the Rams. I think we might learn just how important Derrick Henry is to this offense. I know Eric doesn't like the idea that a running back should move the line, but this is a unicorn. This is the one that everybody chases and actually changes things.
I have the Titans plus the points. I have a ton of 7.5. I think at 7 it's maybe a little bit more right, but I'd still bet it at 7. I think A.J. Brown the last 2 weeks with Derrick Henry, it was like in the 25 carries, 70 yards realm. Like, they've really had to focus on throwing the football to A.J. Brown mostly because Julio's been out. And last week the Colts knew that they were throwing to A.J. Brown, and it was 11 targets, 10 catches, 150 yards.
Sure.
And it's like, to me, that's the ace in the hole for the Titans, which is good quarterback and a wide receiver who has already delivered in games where you sort of needed to have it. And I think if A.J. Brown was more of a guy who was sort of like a secondary player to them, this would be harder, but he's a primary player.
Sure, he is. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I'm going Rams too. I'm going with the Rams too. But what did you say, Darius?
No, I just want to jump in. The difference with this Rams defense is obviously they love to keep those two high safeties back, even before it was a little less popular around the league. And now you don't have to worry about a Derrick Henry in the backfield. That helps a lot. And you have a guy in Jalen Ramsey that in big-time situations, you can put 5 on 11. In the slot, outside, wherever. So I like that in the Rams' favor, something that I don't think the Colts or the team before that had. So that's another reason I kind of talked myself into going to Rams. But not mad at that Titans plus the points here.
All right, we've got Chargers-Eagles. This is another game that I want to touch on, and I feel like we bring up the Chargers all the time because I feel like it's Darius' Chargers here because of his take with Justin Herbert winning MVP, but they've dropped their last 2 games. Now, obviously, they get one in Philly. What do you think about this one, Darius? How confident are you in the Chargers? I believe the line's about 1.5 with this Philly game. What do you think about this one?
You know, my confidence is still fully intact with this Chargers squad. I know a lot of people jumped off the bandwagon. It's been 3 weeks since you got a win. Lost against the Ravens, bye week, and then a loss, surprising to me, against the Patriots. But I think this week they get back on track. Phillies, you know, they're coming off a big-time win, obviously, against the Detroit Lions. They clicked on all cylinders, as they should have. But I think this would be another west to east trip for the Chargers, which I think will be tough. But I think Herbert, that offense, against this vanilla defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they figured out. Herbert's been struggling against these defenses that's giving them multiple fronts, multiple pre-snap looks, pressures, tight windows, and that's the exact opposite of what Philadelphia does on defense. So I think he's much more comfortable this week, and they find.
What do you think, Sam?
I'm curious about whether last week the Eagles kind of stumbled into a better game plan on offense.
No. Darius will tell you, Jared Goff starts at quarterback for the Detroit Lions.
This is true. But what they discovered last week is that, hey, when the offensive line's intact and like relatively healthy, we actually dominate an awful lot of defensive fronts. Let's just run the ball, and it doesn't matter if you're handing it off to Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell or Jordan Howard still getting carries. Like, it doesn't give somebody the ball, they rack up 5 yards per carry behind this offensive line. The Chargers invite you to run the ball anyway, and they're not very good at stopping the run when they do. So, like, this is the game for the Eagles to just say, let's carry on with this game plan and not put everything on Jalen Hurts' shoulders.
Yeah, the Eagles might luck out here, right? They have a chance, you know, in that NFC of getting that 7th playoff seed, right? Because there's no one really there. And in this one, Lombardi for LA runs the least unique scheme on offense in the NFL. And we've talked about this for a while. The Philadelphia Eagles run one of the sort of most vanilla, no stunts, no blitzes, no man. They don't disguise coverages. I'll be interested to see. I think the advantage will go to Herbert today, but it'll be interesting to see. That's why this number is at only 1.5.
Darius, what about your dog of the day? Who we betting here? Who's the underdog we're rolling with this week?
Damn, I forgot. I just picked through my whole lineup. Plus,
you got Texans. It's Texans, right?
Help me remind me. Tyrod Taylor is back in the lineup off his hammy. First week, they look like a Super Bowl potential team. I picked the Texans and the Cardinals to go to represent the AFC, NFC, the Super Bowl. Second week, they're going to at least cover against the Browns. He's pulling hammy on a touchdown run. He's back against my putrid Dolphins, 1-7. Both teams haven't won a game since the first week. I'm taking Tyrod Taylor and the Texans to cover and very potentially win against my terrible, stinky Dolphins right now.
The markets, I think, believe Darius, too. I think this number's moved south of that 5.5, too. So, smart one there. Tyrod Taylor, in his career against the Dolphins, has not thrown an interception. Like, he's kind of a sneaky.
So the last 2 weeks, we've been taking you guys' best and hottest NFL takes on Twitter when you guys have tagged NFL and tagged Pristine Auction. We have this Davante Adams signed jersey that we are going to give away here right now on the show. We've looked at all the takes. We picked out our top 5. So Kendall, I know that you have the top 5 for us, and we're all collectively going to pick a winner here live on the show. Give us the 5.
Yes, I will start with saying I'm so sorry for these Twitter usernames. So we're just gonna try and gloss through these. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Darius. I'm so sorry, everyone. We're just gonna get through it together. It's okay. So the first one is at Callum13533. A ton of numbers after it. Jameis Winston is a top 10 quarterback, but his receiving weapons and Sean Payton are holding him back from showing this.
Oh, Sean Payton holding him back.
I can't give the jersey to somebody who slanders the coach of the year up to this point, right? Like you take Trevor Sikkema and beat the Bucs with him. I'm sorry, like.
Well, it's the first name. It's he's destined to be destined to be a winner. His first name is Trevor.
Alternate Trevor Sikkema, but but at the same Sean Payton is a coach of the year.
That's where you lose me. And so I cover the Bucs for the beginning part of Jameis's career, and I have heard plenty of it's literally every other excuse other than Jameis.
Yeah.
So, and honestly,
Jameis was playing well.
You can make decent arguments for it.
Yeah.
You lose me at Sean Payton. Darius, what do you think about this Jameis take?
Terrible take all the way around. Coming into the season, I would have thought Jameis would have been a top 10 quarterback this year, honestly. But I think if anything is holding Jameis back, it was Jameis this year. And he did start playing better, but I think it's a lot more meat left on that bone, especially with Sean Payton calling shots. I mean, look at his record without Breeze.
Right. I am super bummed. Super bummed, as I am for every injury, that Jameis has a season-ending injury, because I thought this season was going to be a lot of fun. Like you mentioned, Sean Payton being that coach of the year. But I feel like that's kind of what might disqualify.
Jameis had an outside shot at 40 touchdowns this year, and 15
no
picks.
Receivers.
With no receivers,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that to me is a great coach.
That part is legit. Like, he has literally no receivers to work with the Saints. But yes, like, Sean Payton is clearly not holding anybody back with that offense.
Kendall, what's the next one?
All right, at Vishnu Treasurer.
Okay,
that
nice.
one's an okay one.
You were confident in that one. That was good.
Kirk Cousins is an elite quarterback that has been held back by mediocre coaching and unlucky field goal kicking.
Sam?
I thought you were going to take this. I was ready to just like wind you up and sit back and watch what was going to happen.
An elite quarterback. Kirk Cousins is an elite quarterback.
Don't you think everything in this statement is just a step too far?
Yes.
Yes. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback.
Right.
That's held back by. I'm not gonna. We only get one swear word. Terrible coaching. And unlucky field goal kicking.
We only get one swear word.
Unlucky field goal kicking is your fault. When you choose to play games close against Cooper Rush, that is your fault that your kicker doesn't make a kick.
Yeah, you do look at this take, and every bit of it, you're like, not quite, almost. Like, Cousins is definitely better than I think most people want to give him credit for.
I agree.
But he's not elite. I mean, he's elite in certain situations, but when things get a bit harder, the wheels fall off, and that's Kirk Cousins, and that's why he isn't.
But the coaching for Minnesota has been, since week 3,
bad,
horrendous. Yeah, horrendous, and it is holding them back.
Sure,
Darius, what do you think about this?
This is a fair take outside of Kirk Cousins being elite. I would say he's very, very good when you look at the quarterbacks around the league. Elite, not so much, but yeah, it's terrible coaching, and I think unlucky field goal kicking would be kind of an understatement. Just bad in big situations. But Kirk Cousins, not quite elite. I think we can go with another one.
I like this here because we're figuring out that, yeah, you want to be bold about the take, but it's also got to be believable. So we're like finding that balance. Yeah. Which tweet's going to be the perfect one of like hot
Don't
take,
say the craziest
but also
stuff.
Yeah, well, I knew you would not be a fan of this one. Kendall, what's the next one?
There is a lot on the line right now, so this is going to get interesting.
Signed Devontae Adams jersey.
I know. So this one is from at H. Lang Zito. Stafford and Kupp are the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL.
Ooh. I like this one.
It's hard to argue.
I was going to say, Darius, I'll start with you. What do you think about this take?
I mean, it's hard to argue against production, and they have been producing on a record-breaking level right now. So obviously, you got Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, but you got Murray and Hop. I mean, it's hard to argue with this one. I would say this one up to this point is probably the best take, but maybe it makes too much sense. Maybe it's no risk here. But I'm with you. I forgot your name, but I'm with you here.
What do you guys?
I just think this is true up until this point. They are playing the best in the NFL.
Yeah.
If you offer me a choice of who I want as wide receiver, quarterback, I'm taking Mahomes and Hill. But if you want to say you can have the first 8 games of any 2 players in the league, I would take Stafford and Kupp.
The only thing I would say,
you're taking Mahomes and Hill right now.
Right now,
Stafford and Kupp.
That's right.
The only thing I would say...
You should see him on Sundays going crazy during Chiefs games. You'd understand why he's doing that. Go ahead, Sam.
The only thing I would say sort of against this take is that Cooper Kupp is also like the most uncovered receiver in the NFL this year. Yeah. And not necessarily because he's turning defenders inside and out, because this scheme is just destroying defenses right now. And Kupp is like running these deep overs into acres of space where there's just nobody there. If you put Cooper Kupp in the same situation as Devontae Adams or one of these other receivers that's in that conversation, does it look quite the same? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take.
But that's good coaching. That's good coaching. That's it. I mean,
but it isn't
like
QB wide receiver
most
duo.
Uncovered. he gets a lot of free access into the defenses.
So we're not throwing this one out for Mr. Z2.
So it's good coaching, and it's also a good quarterback that's finding them.
Mr. and Mrs. Actually, I don't.
No, this is, I think this is a good take because like Darius said, I think on the surface you would go, oh, yeah, I mean, Cubs having an unbelievable year. Stafford's playing well. They're 7-1. But at the same time, you kind of bring in Sam's argument. You go, okay, well, Rodgers and Devontae, maybe it's more difficult for them. Or you've got Tyreek and Patrick Mahomes who have the talent ceiling. And then Kyler and
the wording is a big one. The best is different than has played the best.
Yeah, they said
has
the best.
Played the best is a slam dunk.
I like this one. All right, Kendall, let's get to more.
I did like this. This one is going to be my favorite to see you guys debate. So this is from @its_Sam_W.
Is this you?
Good username.
You can't. Sam Monson, you can't win this.
Not me.
Okay, all right.
All right. So this user says Trayvon Diggs is the most overrated corner in the NFL.
I'm 100% starting with the guy who played cornerback in the NFL, Darius. Is Trayvon Diggs the most overrated corner in the NFL?
This is, once again, it's hard to argue with production. And he's producing on and usually you don't look at corners and say, okay, who has more picks this year? Oh, yeah, he's the best corner in the league. So I necessarily wouldn't say he's the best corner in the league, but because he's creating turnovers damn near every game, I mean, it's hard to be overrated in that way. If you're a pass rusher and you're getting a sack every game or you got 8 through 9 games, like it's hard to be overrated. So I'm going to say he is not overrated, and he is definitely a top 2 or 3 corner in the league right now because of his ball production.
What do we think?
As somebody who lived through the Marcus Peters experience in Kansas City and liked it, because the league is not about shutdown defense anymore.
Turnovers.
The league is about big plays.
Thank you.
And because it's like if you select for a defense that's going to be shut down, like think Jags in 2017, think Vikes in 17, think Bears in 18. Like once the turnovers went away, the effect of those defenses went away, right? And I know turnovers are random, and I know like plays on the ball like are random too, but like I like the aggressiveness, and I like when Dallas is an amazing offense. And so if a corner is understanding that calculus and saying, look, I'm going to make a step on the ball, and if I get beat, Dak's got my back. They're going to score the next drive.
Sure.
To me, I think that's a fair approach in the NFL, and hence he can't be the most overrated corner in the league. Can he, Sam?
Well, okay. I like bringing in sacks, right? Sacks, I think, is a great way of looking at this because sacks are important. If you get a guy that racks up 20 sacks in a season, that guy has done a fantastic job, but it's probably not a great way of looking at his overall production. So you look at pressures. You look at, are there things about his game that indicate this sack run is going to continue, or are we just looking at a freaky run of numbers that's going to regress in the other direction?
Right.
Cornerback, I think, is the same thing. You look at interceptions, it's great. Everybody wants the picks. That's 100% the most important part of your job. But you then look at the other data and you say, all right, what about his game suggests this is going to be sustainable, and what suggests this is just a random run of 7 picks that he's had? Almost every other data point says that Diggs is riding a wave that is going to come crashing back down to earth at some point.
Oh, no.
Look at the numbers. He's given up
I do agree that if Darius's thing is saying he's a 2 or 3 corner in the league, that may be a little aggressive. Like when I say the most overrated corner in the NFL, I mean people are saying he's 2 or 3 and he's really 50. I don't think Trayvon Diggs is 50. I think Trayvon Diggs is like 15. And obviously you want a guy who's like a shutdown guy.
Sure.
Who's not because he's on pace to give up 1,000 yards going into last week. That is a thing.
Yes.
But he is making
But you know what's also interesting? Not only is he on pace for like 1,000 yards in a season, but he's also one of the most targeted corners in the NFL.
Yeah.
The league itself is looking at this guy who's getting a pick every game and saying,
I want more of that.
Right,
yeah.
it's still definitely worth throwing it into his coverage. That speaks volumes.
And I like that. I like that as a Cowboy. I like that because we just talked about that offense and Dak. And if we can still, what do you average? 11, 12, 13 possession a game. If I can steal a possession even every other game, like we talked about, that's more valuable. That's probably just as valuable as having a guy like Revis because I can just throw away from him. We beat the Jets one year like 45-3, and Brady threw the ball like 45 times. It just didn't target Revis. So I'd much rather have a guy who, we can target him. He's going to pick it and take it to the house maybe even. So I know the numbers may say it's random and he's going to fall off a cliff. but his ball skills are rare at the position, like rare. And obviously it goes back to his receiving days at Bama and early on in his career, but his ball skills are rare at the position, and so is his confidence. So in this league, you're going to get beat at corner.
There were two things Phillip Rivers loved doing more than anything else.
I know, hey, at some point he's going to gamble and he's going to be right.
There was two things Phillip Rivers loved doing more than anything else.
I beg you not
Don't
to
do
finish
this.
the sentence.
Throwing interceptions to Marcus Peters.
Don't do this.
And procreation. Those are the two things he liked doing the most. And that was why the Chiefs never lost to the Chargers. It matters.
Kendall, what's the last one? What's the last one?
Eric, stop. All right, the last one from @golf_and_cider. Not bad. None of the NFC North teams have their 2023 starting quarterback on their roster at the moment.
Wow.
The Detroit gets better. The Detroit Lions will win the North in 2022. Big Campbell, coach of the year in 2022. New darling of the analytics community.
There's a lot here. There is a lot going on here. Big respect for this take.
The Bears are not going to start Justin Fields next year?
He's
2023.
Oh,
2023.
Yeah.
So like,
oh, come on.
this year. So he's saying this year he struggles, and then next year Fields also struggles, and then they give up on him.
No, because they're like, no. This is next year. The Bears coach is not going to say this is my 1 year of Justin Fields, right? Because it's not going to be Nagy, right? Let's face facts. So you're the new coach is going to come in and be like, I want my own. No. I mean, Jared Goff might be there in 2023, given his contract and all that nonsense.
No, because like Jared Goff has this year, and then next year that they pay him, and then they can move on.
That's true.
So the Goff one is done. The Aaron Rodgers could be gone.
He's going to be a bridge guy, though? Like, start the first couple games, give way?
No,
absolutely. That's going to be Goff's role in the NFL for like a decade.
You got to move on from Goff. You're gonna move on from Goff.
They'd move on from Goff this year if they
Justin Fields will be there. Aaron Rodgers is going to play as long as he wants to. We saw, come on, guys. This guy's going to be around forever.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's going to be in Green Bay. I can't even trust Aaron Rodgers to be in Green Bay at this point. I don't know.
I mean, with the amount of clay that guy eats,
I think Kirk Cousins probably stays with the Vikings, too. Yeah.
I mean,
so it sounds like we're just. I love the take. I love the boldness, but it sounds like we're all out on it.
Trying to predict.
Did he say the Lions would?
We have
win the division in 2022 next year.
I think we'll win kind of blocked
the next year.
We just ignored that.
This is a hard block on Twitter right here.
Okay, all right. No, it's not a block. It's a good take.
This person not only doesn't win the jersey, but is immediately blocked from ever following PFF tweets from here on in.
Okay, so it sounds like we got to vote now. We have 5 people that we can vote. Which take are we voting for? It sounds like it's either the Trayvon Diggs is overrated take or Stafford and Cooper Kupp are the best wide receiver duo. Sam, what are you voting on?
I think it's the Diggs one. That's the most debatable thing. I think that's the one where we're split the most across the board. The Cooper Kupp thing is too close to just the truth.
Okay. Yeah, it's not that hot of a take. It's a hot take, but it's not that hot of a take. I do agree. I think Trayvon Diggs, the nuance in this discussion is because look, if you view him as cornerback 10, then there's no way he's over or underrated. If you view him as quarterback 2, then you could say, oh, okay, he's a little bit overrated, but not the it elicits good discussion. So I like the Diggs one as well.
Darius, what do you think? What's your vote on?
As a resident defensive back, there's no way I could go against Diggs, especially when he's creating those turnovers. I'm going to go for the Kupp Stafford. That was the best one to me.
Okay, all right, Kendall, what's your vote?
I like the Diggs one only because that was the easiest username to pronounce today.
Nice.
Now I don't have to be the tiebreaker. I realized halfway through me setting it up there that if we split 2-2, I was going to have to be the bad guy and somebody wasn't going to get a jersey because of me. But I would also agree. I think the Diggs one is the best take because
congratulations on your jersey,
had
Sam.
The best back and forth. So it's _Sam_W. This is now yours. This is now yours.
Earned.
We are going to. We'll contact you somehow, whether it's through Twitter or whatever.
You'll find the postage address is just upstairs.
Big ups. If it's you, we're going to figure it out. We're going to give it to the other take. Big ups to our friends over at Pristine Auction who made that whole thing happen. That was a lot of fun. I'd love to do that again. Hopefully you guys can get on it a little bit more as well. That was a blast. Final thoughts before we get out of here this weekend. What do you guys think?
I can't. I got nothing that rivals Anthony Treash's butter is fake deal. I don't have that in me. I got nothing.
If you guys don't watch the college football preview show on Friday, You need to be, because you never know what's going to come out of Anthony's mouth at any point in the show.
We were taking knees on that show.
We were. Well, I was
Anthony
giving
just fumbled the ball.
Very typical, like, hey guys, we got any last takes before we get out of here? Oh yeah, football thing. Oh, football thing. All right, see you guys next week. And Anthony pops in with a butter is fake out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He said butter is fake out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's rough.
Darius, do you have any butter takes? Do you have any butter is fake takes?
The Chargers, I'm sticking with the Chargers and Herbert, man. They get back on the train and get back on track this week. And I still like them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year.
To be competitive. Right, Eric?
Favorites to win the AFC West still, so Darius is not that far off. The Jets have been competitive the last 2 weeks, so.
That's actually a great point. You're back on the train. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. For Darius Butler, for Kendall Valenzuela, for Sam Monson and Eric Eager, I am Trevor Sikkema. We will see you guys right here, same time, next week.